let's go quickly with our science critic. Here it is. Give me a second here. I'm going to put him on. He's going to argue that mathematics is indispensable. It's a requirement of physics. Okay? And I'm going to argue exactly the opposite. Mathematics has nothing to do with physics or with science. So here it goes. Okay, give me a second. I'll put him on. Okay, there we go.
In this rebuttal, we will address the issue of whether we need math in physics.
Oh, that was a very stupid thing to say, Bill.
Maths is pretty much essential for physics. If you don't have maths, you don't have physics. There is a reason why Newton invented calculus. In fact, if you have two competing hypotheses, how do you tell them apart? Well, that will be done using maths.
Okay, so Fell says that the way they prove hypotheses in mathematical physics, or in his version of science, is by using math. Okay, first we have a difference in the word hypothesis. It has nothing to do with theory. Hypothesis is not a theory. In mathematical physics, a hypothesis is an unproven or a tentative theory. That's not what it is in real science. In science, hypotheses are the objects, the definitions, and the statement of the facts. In other words, the first frames of the movie. Then from there, you build your theory. Okay, so we have a difference there. But let's get to the word math. Is math part of physics? Is math part of science? Well, in order to do that, you have to define what science is and what physics is. And that's where the problem is. These people have never defined the word physics in a rational manner. They haven't defined the word science in a rational manner. They think that science is just a series of descriptions. And we're saying science is explanations, not descriptions. We have a difference there. And this is the rundown here, real quick. Science, rational explanations. Physics, rational explanations of what? Causes and mechanisms. We have to have an explanation of mechanisms, of causes. That's what we don't have today. And you might say, well, I don't agree with your definition, Bill. Okay, no problem. The issue is the following. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to say, is explaining how this magnet attracts that other magnet, right? Is that a question of physics according to you? Do you think this is part of the subject matter of physics? Explaining how it is that one magnet attracts another, for example? Is this part of physics?
Yes.
If you say that this is a question that physics has to answer, that it is a question of physics, the definition we have today of science and of physics does not address these types of questions. The mathematical physicists and the scientists, so-called scientists, they say these questions are questions of philosophy. And philosophy is outside the bounds of physics and of science. Philosophy is the mother of all sciences and blah, blah, blah. And so this is not a question that physics answers. That's what the problem is. So we have irrational explanations, for example, that warp space is gravity, that a particle can be at two places at once. And when you say, well, that's irrational. And they say, well, yeah, because that's philosophy and we don't care and that's not part of science. But that's the questions, the type of questions people ask, for example, in Quora. They say, how does a magnet attract another? And you have all these mathematical physicists that come in there and they say, well, here's the equation. This is the force with which one magnet attracts another. Well, that's not the question I'm asking. I'm asking, what is the physical mechanism of how a magnet attracts another? And you won't find an answer to those questions because they don't consider it part of physics, part of science. That's where the problem is. And so again, if physics is rational explanations of causes and mechanisms, that covers all physics. And if that's the case, we don't need, for an explanation, we don't need math at all. No numbers, no math, no equations, no functions. We don't need any of that. Because with that, you cannot explain. And if physics and science is about explaining, you cannot explain with math. You can only describe with math. Okay, that's the issue. You don't like my definition? Come up with a better mousetrap. Give me a definition that you can sink your teeth into. Don't copy it from the dictionary. Don't transcribe it. Don't copy paste. Come up with a definition that you can defend for physics, and then we'll find out if mathematics has anything at all to do with physics. You can't use authority, you can't use tradition, you can't use democracy. You can't say that's the way we always did it. You can't say everybody in the universe believes in my version. You can't say any of that. And you can't say, well, that's what I was taught in college or in high school. Authority, you can't use any of those. Come up with a definition that you can defend. Okay? So how does math explain gravity, for example, how gravity works? Well, you can't do it with math. You can only tell me how strong gravity is, maybe. But you cannot tell me what caused it with an equation. That's why math has nothing to do with physics. Physics is explaining. Physics is not doing an equation that describes what happened. Okay? So mathematical physics is an oxymoron because math describes, physics explains. Never the twain shall meet. Okay? You're trying to unite two things that are incompatible. Math is description and physics is explanation.